How can we keep the cost of diabetes under control? Aren't those test strips really expensive? Good morning. Let's talk about the expenses involved in taking care of your diabetes. In my previous video, I emphasized keeping it simple, keeping the control of your diabetes simple. And in the list of three or four things that I mentioned as being important in the most important things in controlling your diabetes, um, I said uh, that it doesn't have to be expensive to do this, but one of the main things I recommended was testing your blood glucose very often, especially early on. Like in my own story, I was checking my fasting blood sugar first thing in the morning, which most diabetics will do. For many diabetics, that's the only time that they test. Early on, I was testing after every meal. And for a little while, only a little while, I was testing three times after each meal because I was testing at 30 minutes, at 1 hour, and at 2 hours to kind of learn where my spike was. I learned that my blood sugar spikes usually around the 1 hour mark. I quit testing three times after each meal and would only test once at the 1 hour mark. Um, so I know I learned so much from your comments, and it made me think about some things in terms of the expense. Those test strips can be expensive, and so what about that? Yeah, those test strips can definitely be expensive, and but I've done some shopping around on that, and Walmart has a glucose monitor called Rely On. That's their brand, and they make test strips for this that are the least expensive that I've been able to find. So you could check that option out. Um, I still just when I was talking about controlling your diabetes in an inexpensive way, um, I was primarily talking about the food. You know, so many purists in the keto world and in the carnivore world. The carnivore diet is a super good, a great low carb um, option because it can be zero carb um, if the meat hasn't been adulterated with any kind of additives, dry rubs that might have sugar in them or anything like that. Um, but um, a lot of these purists and people who are really into that now, some of them aren't diabetics, and some of them don't have any problems with money, and and a lot of them are doing it. Some of the carnivore people are bodybuilders, and they would spare no expense to get the results that they want. Um, and they will tell you that you have to have grass-fed ribeyes and uh, all sorts of expensive options, different expensive seafood and things like that, and only the very best of eggs, which I like having the best eggs. I'll definitely look for free range for eggs from free range chickens and everything. Um, but you don't have to go the expensive route. Any eggs will do. Um, any meat will do. Hamburger meat. You know if your budget is more of a hamburger budget than it is a ribeye budget, go for hamburger meat. You don't have to go the most expensive route. Or if you want a steak, you could get a less expensive steak. Um, One of the advantages of a ribeye is it has a lot of natural fat there, and it's a good thing to keep your fat uh, intake up. But you can add fat to any piece of meat, whether it's hamburger or a skirt steak or the cheapest steak you can find, you can smear butter on it. Be sure it's butter and not margarine, but you can smear good butter on there and add to the fat content and without having to go to a ribeye. But anyway, the test strips can be expensive. Um, you shouldn't have to test 3 times after each meal for very long. In fact, maybe within 2 days of doing that, 2 or 3 days, you'll find out where you normally spike. And then you only have to go to doing it once after each meal. Now, keep in mind, I'm a big, big, big proponent of fast with intermittent fasting. Like my routine, once I settled into it, was one meal a day. So, now you're down to only testing once a day. I mean, I would test in the morning when I first woke up to see what that fasting glucose level was, and then my evening meal was my one meal a day, and I would test 1 hour after that because I'd already knew that 1 hour was best for me. So now I'm only using 2 strips per day. If you're thinking in terms of 2 test strips, for your glucose meter, and that's a big savings right there. Also, when you're doing intermittent fasting or even some longer term fasting, you're saving a lot of money on food. You're not eating as many times a day, and so you're saving. Like early on, I did some 48-hour fasts and some 72-hour fasts. Not a lot of that. Then I settled into my one meal a day. But if you're fasting for 2 days or for 3 days, you're saving money on food and you're saving money on test strips. So those are some money saving ideas. And again, this glucose monitor from Walmart, none of these meters are perfect. They will vary, a few points, but they still give you valuable information. Say it's off by 5 points, and it says your blood glucose is 110 when it's really 1.5. That's still a range of information that you can work with. If you eat the wrong kind of food and all of a sudden you're getting a 185 or a 200, maybe the true number is 5 points lower than that, but you still know that that's not a good food for you to eat. You know that you spiked, and so the monitor doesn't have to be perfect, but this is a very affordable one that you can buy at Walmart real cheap. You get an initial kit that's very inexpensive, and it comes with some test strips and everything with it when you start off. And then when you need extra test strips, though that's the least expensive monitor that or I should say glucose meter, that I've been able to find. And so those are some money saving ideas for you. Is with intermittent fasting, you don't have as many meals that you have to test after, and it's extremely valuable information that you get from testing after meals like that. For instance, just an example, say that you believe that you really need your oatmeal every day. I've run into diabetics that say that. I have diabetics in my office every single day and talk to them about these different issues. And I have some say, well, I have to have my oatmeal every day. My doctor told me I need to eat oatmeal for breakfast every morning. And then I just have to politely ask if you've ever tested your blood sugar after your oatmeal. I ask them too, what do they put on their oatmeal? And if they're putting skim milk, the worst milk choice you could make, if they're putting skim milk on their oatmeal and they're chopping up a banana and putting that on there and throwing some raisins and some nuts on there, the raisins, the bananas, the skim milk are all bad choices. And in my opinion, I mean, I tested myself with, oh, I love oatmeal, and I tested myself early on oatmeal, and just oatmeal, plain oatmeal by itself spiked my blood sugar. And I tested myself with bananas, and bananas spiked my blood sugar. And so I would never, if I was going to eat oatmeal, I sure wouldn't put bananas on it, and I wouldn't put raisins on there. I know that's going to spike your blood sugar. And putting all of that together, oatmeal with skim milk and bananas and raisins, and the nuts might be the only thing good there if they're the right kind of nuts. But anyway, a low carb nut. And you can find the carb count online. You know, you can Google the carbohydrate count online, and that could save you from testing things. But it's very, very powerful and very convincing when you test yourself after eating these things. That's what Dennis Pollock, that's how he learned so much. He's not a doctor. He's quick to tell you that, but he's become an expert on diabetes by testing himself constantly. And, you know, he probably doesn't have to do it that much anymore, just like I don't, because I know which foods are a problem for me. And you can become an expert yourself by testing. And I think it's worth the investment. I've showed you ways you can save money with it, but early on, for that first month or so, it's worth whatever investment you put into it to find out which foods are bad for you. Keep a diary, write it down, say, well, I tried my oatmeal today and tried it without anything on it, and it spiked my blood sugar. You know, I had tried it yesterday with my bananas and my raisins and my skim milk, and it shot me up to 250. I tried it today without anything added to it, and it shot it to 185. And so now you know that oatmeal is not a good choice for you. Test yourself, but I know, you know, from testing myself that oatmeal is something I had to eliminate from my diet. And that's only one example with one food, but try it out with different foods and find out for yourself. And you won't have to do it for the rest of your life. You won't have to test so much for the rest of your life. I would recommend that all diabetics check their fasting glucose first thing in the morning before they've taken any kind of food or drink. But you won't have to do it, you know, certainly as many times as you do early on, but it's real powerful to learn what foods spike your blood sugar and then eliminate those foods. And so anyway, hopefully this will help us all to live healthy and finish strong. Thank you.